All right, let's jump into this blog. It's really got me thinking. It's all about how 80s TV shows, the ones we grew up with, can actually be looked at through like a philosophical lens. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it's not like the typical, like, oh, here's a recap of the episode kind of thing. It's more like the author is using those shows to dive into these bigger questions about memory and nostalgia and, how our whole view of the world changes as we get older.
Exactly. And we're going to zero in on two specific entries today. One is called Mazinger Z is Not My Robot, and the other one, get this, Why Philosopher Smurf Was Launched into the Air.
Oh, those titles are gold. I mean, right off the bat, you're in for some deep thinking with those. The first one, Mazinger Z is Not My Robot, it really gets at this feeling that I think a lot of us have had. You have this show from your childhood that's like crystal clear in your memory,
Yeah.
but nobody else seems to remember it.
So for sure, like you had this secret world all to yourself. I know exactly what you mean. The author talks about this robot, El Vengador, which I guess means the Avenger in Spanish. And the way this thing transforms is just bonkers. The human character basically turns into this giant robot head. And then, get this, all the other body parts, like the arms and legs, they come flying in and attach, like a messed up jigsaw puzzle, but with a giant robot.
The author goes into so much detail about it, too. It's like you can practically see it happening in your mind.
Yeah.
And it just shows how powerful those childhood memories can be, even if they're hard to explain to other people.
Totally. And there's this whole part about what the author calls the semi-robot phase. It's like during the transformation, there's this point where the character is still human-sized, but their body's all metallic, like they're wearing some high-tech armor. The author was obsessed with this weird in-between form.
And they actually talk about wishing that the show would have a fight scene where the character had to battle it out in this awkward, half-transformed state. Like, they wanted to see what that would even look like.
And the crazy thing is, their wish came true. There's actually an episode where something goes wrong and the character can't fully transform. So they have to fight in that exact semi-robot form. It's like the creators of the show somehow knew exactly what the author was thinking as a kid.
It really highlights how we tend to project our own desires and ideas onto the things we watch and read, especially as kids. We want those stories to line up with our own little worlds, even if it means a giant robot having to fight in some awkward, half-formed state.
Okay, now let's jump to Smurf Village.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that running gag with Philosopher Smurf. He was always getting launched out of there, like a little blue cannonball. It was hilarious.
Yeah, total classic. But the author has this realization as an adult that maybe it wasn't just a harmless joke. Maybe it was actually a commentary on how society as a whole tends to treat philosophical thought.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, like even the Smurfs, who are supposed to be all about peace and harmony, they resort to violence when faced with ideas that are a little too, deep for them.
I never thought of it that way. But it does make you think, right? How many times have we had an idea that felt super important to us, but then it gets shut down or dismissed or even made fun of? And maybe that says something about how uncomfortable we are as a society with really challenging the status quo.
It's definitely food for thought. And it ties back to this bigger idea that runs throughout the blog. Even something as simple as a children's cartoon can have these layers of meaning. And the way we understand those meanings changes as we grow and change ourselves. Like, those Smurfs are this tiny little mirror of the whole world.
Right. And Philosopher Smurf, he's the one who dares to be different, to ask the big questions. But what happens?
They kick him to the curb.
Exactly. Instead of, actually listening to what he has to say, they just get him out of there. It's hilarious, but kind of sad, too.
It is. And that's what's so clever about this blog. It takes these moments from our childhood, things we probably didn't even think twice about back then.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at them with fresh eyes. It's like, whoa, it's a whole lot more going on there than I realized. Right. It reminds us that learning doesn't just stop when you finish school. It's a lifelong thing. We're always picking up new information, forming opinions, even from the stuff we watch or listen to for fun. And those early experiences, they really shape how we see the world.
That whole El Vengador thing that the author was talking about? It really resonated with me. I had this show when I was a kid. I can't for the life of me remember what it was called.
Oh, no.
But the thing is, I can still picture the characters, the stories, all of it, super vivid,
It's like those memories become part of your own personal story. These stories that shaped your imagination as a kid, but you can't really share them with anyone else because they wouldn't get it.
Exactly. They just wouldn't get it.
Mm.
It makes you wonder how many other El Vengadors are out there.
Mhm.
You know, shows that meant the world to someone,
Mhm.
but they just never made it into that mainstream cultural memory.
It's fascinating, right? It just goes to show how important individual perspective is. Just because something wasn't super popular doesn't mean it didn't have a huge impact on someone somewhere.
Absolutely. And the author's passion for El Vengador is contagious. It makes you want to dig around and find those hidden gems, those pieces of pop culture that might have slipped through the cracks, but they mean something special to someone, somewhere.
It's like we all have our own little museums inside us, filled with these bits and pieces from our past that tell our story. And sometimes it just takes the right person to come along and shine a spotlight on those treasures, help us see them in a whole new way.
That's a really beautiful way to put it. It's like, even in those hazy memories from childhood, there's beauty and meaning to be found, just waiting to be rediscovered. So where does this all leave us? After this deep dive into 80s cartoons and, all those childhood memories, we've kind of unearthed these hidden messages. Like they were right there in front of us the whole time.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that even the stuff we think of as, simple or childish can actually be pretty deep. And as we grow up and change, our understanding of those things changes too.
It's true. Like, who had thought that Philosopher Smurf getting launched into the air was like a metaphor for society's fear of challenging ideas? But now I see it. It totally makes sense.
It's like one of those optical illusions. You look at it one way and you see one thing, then suddenly your perspective shifts and bam, something totally different. Our view of the world is always changing, and everything we experience, even silly stuff like cartoons, plays a part in that.
And what I think is really cool is that this blog isn't just about reminiscing about the past. It's about using those old memories to better understand, ourselves and the world we live in today.
Exactly. By revisiting these shows and really thinking about what they were trying to say, we can learn a lot about our own values and beliefs. And you never know, we might even start to see those same patterns and themes popping up in the stuff we watch and read today.
That's a great point. It's like maybe we're surrounded by philosopher Smurfs right now. Ideas or opinions that are getting shut down because they make people uncomfortable.
It's definitely something to think about. So here's a question for you. What show or memory from your childhood has taken on a new meaning for you as you've gotten older? Like, what's something you used to think was simple or childish that now you realize is actually pretty complex?
And maybe even more importantly, what hidden messages are we missing right now in the things we watch and read? It's kind of wild to think that the stuff that seems straightforward today might look totally different years down the road.
It is. It's pretty exciting, actually. We really encourage you to check out this blog and, take a trip down memory lane, explore those forgotten parts of your own pop culture history. You never know what you might discover.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, hold on to those childhood memories and keep your minds open to new ways of seeing things.